Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Today we'll be looking at the whole concept of, does the JLP has a better track record in crime fighting? Does the JLP have a better track record in crime fighting than the PNP has? Now, notice that I'm wearing an orange shirt. For those of you who think that I'm PNP, I am, suggesting that I'm neither JLP nor PNP. So there was a cheeky and witty subscriber or somebody who commented on one of my videos previously, and he was suggesting that the fact that I was wearing an orange shirt suggested that I was on the PNP side. No, the color of my shirt does not show any party affiliation, right? Or I'm not a supporter of any of the political party. I am a political commentator, and that is what I do. All right, so please take that out of your heads. However, we are going to look now, and there's an article that appeared in the Jamaican Gleaner this morning, and it suggests it's making the statement. This is a statement that JLP has better track record in crime fighting than the PNP does. Now, the writer of the article, whose name is Steady, right, and he seems to be from the Ocherius area in St. Anne, and he writes thusly: this is a general election year where cost of living, crime, and corruption are the three major issues. So we have cost of living, crime, right, and corruption, because people have been talking about corruption. We have seen where the Prime Minister is actually currently meddled and meshed in corruption, particularly as it relates to his statutory declaration and other assets, undeclared assets that he might have or he might not have. Looking at the recent statistics, the Jamaica Labor Party will have the advantage in fighting crime. So this writer is looking at the statistics, and as they say, statistics don't lie, or do they not? I leave that to you. Pointing out the numbers is not playing politics or bias with crime, but pointing out facts and realities. And this is what we always say, that the statistics always point to facts, but I defer. These are the statistics for both JLP and the People's National Party. Now, if the statistics are what both parties have said it is, then we can say that they're facts, right? And these are lived experiences, and he's citing statistics from the lived experiences in terms of over the years, as the years have progressed. These are the statistics for both JLP and People's National Party administrations from 1989 to 2024. So this is a very intelligent article, because this writer has decided to go and do his research, and he's looking back from 1989 to 2024. Now, in 1989, he's suggesting here there were 439 murders. In 2006, murders stood at 1,340, and in 2011, murders stood at 1,125. And those would have been under the PNP, right? You'd agree with me that the PNP was in power in 1989 when Michael Mann came into power. 2006, the PNP would have still been in power, because the JLP came into power in 2007, and 2011 also when the JLP lost the election, so 1,340. So we have in 1989, we had 439 murders. We were capping. In 2006, we had 1,340 murders, and in 2011, murders stood at 1,125. Now, remember now that we are not citing here opinions, we're citing information from statistics that I'm sure coming from the experts, those who have tabulated murder rates and crime and violence in Jamaica. Now, in 2015, the PNP were still in power. The murder rate stood at 1,192, and in 2024, murder stood at 1,139. So last year, the murder rate stood at 1,139. Still a lot, but, when we think about what happened in previous years when murders stood at 1,600, I think in 2009, the murder rate was almost 1,700. We have to thank God for small mercies. Now, the writer here suggesting he continues to suggest or to intimate, when comparing the PNP administration from 1989 to 1997, to the GLP 2016 to 2024, it is clear by the numbers that murders remain stable at under 0% increase, while the PNP two-term gave over 100% increase as 1997 murders stood at 1,037, because 1,037 would have been a high murder rate in 1997 because we were there in the 800s, 1989 and onwards, which was the first time crime statistics saw over 1,000 murders. So he's correct here. So it seems as if we normalized over 1,000 murders after 1997. It's almost as if the authorities in Jamaica allowed the crime rate to have gotten out of control, and they were teasing the Jamaicans in terms of how they would be able to become adapted and for them to normalize the murder rates to over 1,000 rate. And I think from that time in 1997, when murders started going over 1,000, even when it was at 800, that we should have taken the bull by its horn, and we should have begun the process of seeking to develop and to implement a credible and viable crime plan. But we didn't. Because as I have projected here on this platform, on my channel, that crime is an industry. And I dare any of the experts to challenge me on that. Because if it is not an industry, why do we continue to have these high crime rates? And we have not seen where either of the parties, the GLP or the PNP, have presented any credible crime strategy, any credible, viable crime plan. The PNP could argue that their administration was the last administration to have crime under 850 murders since 1989, as murders stood at 849, and the only administration since 2004 to have murders under 1,010. In 2014, and the PNP would still have been in power, that feat was achieved with 1,005 murders in 2014. Remember now that after the Dudu saga, which he is going to present here in 2010, the murder rates went down dramatically. Not because they had taken Dudus, and that's what they're tricking us, but because they had, states of emergencies. Remember now that they had states of emergency in Jamaica after the dispatch, before and after the dispatch of Christopher Dudus Coke to the United States of America. And you could see that there was a joint effort between the military and the police force in containing crime and violence in Jamaica. And I was wondering, why didn't they continue until they decided to, until all the criminals would have been taken in, or most of them. You can't take in all of them, but until most of the well-known criminals would have been taken in. The 2010 Tivoli Gardens incursion and its aftermath is the major reason for crime reduction from 2011 to 2015. And he's right. Let me repeat that. The 2010 Tivoli Gardens incursion and its aftermath is the major reason for crime reduction from 2011 to 2015. And he is absolutely correct. It is not that they did anything miraculously or the PNP by virtue. It was because there was a joint effort which was started under the GLP. Because remember now that the whole Tivoli Gardens incursion happened under the GLP administration. The GLP would have been credited, even though the PNP inherited that legacy of the Tivoli Gardens incursion. So it was not because it was no effort by the PNP. According to the numbers, the GLP are better crime fighters. That's what he's concluding. Teddy Lee Gray is concluding here. According to the numbers, the GLP are better crime fighters. Some will argue it is based on luck, while others will argue that it is based on policy. I think it is the former and not the latter. I think it's based on luck. Because what policy have they really devised? Well, we could say that the state of emergency, if you want to call it a policy, and the fact that they had that joint police military operation, which I think should continue on the streets, on major streets in Jamaica. And I think that Martin Henry, a former Gleaner columnist, he actually suggested that if we do that, we would have a lower crime rate. That should be a temporary strategy or tactic, as it were. We have not done it. in all across the major streets in Jamaica, whether it's in Lucy, whether it's in Brownstown, whether it's in all the, particularly those crime spot areas. Well, of course, Brownstown is not a crime spot area. Probably Lucy is not too, but in all of the major crime centers and the crime hotspot areas, then all of these military, there should be a joint military and police operation to contain, because as Martin Henry was suggesting, if you have these operations, behaviors will be forced to be contained. And if you frighten the criminals and you arrest these hardcore gangsters in their faces, then their behavior would be contained. People generally are afraid when you have that joint military and police operation. It is very sad that when statistics are pointed out and both parties' track record in dealing with crime is compared, some would argue that people should stop playing politics with murders. And I think that's what we have been doing. I agree with Steadily Gray that we have been playing politics with our murder rate, and we have not been taking crime and violence seriously. As a result of that, we have a very, out of control crime statistics. And even though we are suggesting that this year we have had 265 fewer murders, but the crime rate is still high. Still, for the Gleaner contextualized it in an article yesterday that crime, even though it's 265 fewer murders, that we still have a ranking of 42 per 100,000. That's a high crime rate. If you have anything over 30, it means that you have a high, I would say over 20, I should say. You have a very high crime rate on your hand. And we have 42 per 100,000 people who have been murdered in Jamaica in 2024. That is still a high ranking, a high statistics. So even though Teddy Lee Gray here has made some points, and we can agree with him, based on the numbers that were presented, that it seems to me that the GLP might be more hardened crime. I won't say hardened crime, but during their tenure, during their reign, during their administrations, successive administrations, that successive GLP administrations, we have had not a greater reduction, but a modest reduction in crime and violence. I'm trying to stay away from significant and, and dramatic, because those are words that Jamaicans like to use, like to say that there are significant reduction when there is just a modest, it's not any significant reduction. If we have now like a 20 per 100,000, that would be a significant reduction in crime and violence, because that would have been halved, right? Because you could see that we are standing in the 40s for many years. So if we should have it, and it should be like, even if it goes to 30, I would want, even though that is still high, but I would want to say that would be a significant reduction also. So you decide, do you think the GLP is better at crime reduction than the PNP? Do you think that the Jamaica Labor Party is really more effective at what you say now, clamping down, at stemming the tide of crime and violence? Please let me know in the comment section, because that is something that is very also important for the country to know, and also for the people, for those of us who are voters, to challenge. Well, I am not a voter, but for those of you who are voting, that you should challenge your politicians in terms of what strategies is the GLP putting in place that the PNP is lacking and not putting in place for there to be a resurgence or a high murder rate under the PNP administration than what we have under the GLP administration. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Now, I understand based on my analytics in YouTube that 72% of my viewers have not yet subscribed. What is it taking you to subscribe? Just hit the subscription button. It's free of cost. So please, I have also a lot of people who are 65 and older. So I know that sometimes maybe you're not so much aware of what you should do, but if you look at the button, it says subscribe. Just hit that button and you will be subscribed, and it's free of cost, and it's only once. It's not done every video. You just do it once. And once you have done it, then you also should turn on your post notifications, and you will be updated in terms of when I upload a new video. All the best to you. See you in another one. Ciao.